Guys, Chad Wesley Smith, founder of Juggernaut Training Systems and owner of the 9th highest raw powerlifting total of all time. You know, since we started making a lot more shirts at Juggernaut, I've come to realize a couple things. First, I'm not that clever. Can't think of any funny sayings to put on our shirts. Also, I'm apparently not very tough. I don't have skulls on there or any like hardcore phrases or anything. Also, not very motivational. I don't put any motivational sayings on the shirts or anything to inspire you. But probably if you get inspired by a saying on a t-shirt, you're going to suck. Also, my lifestyle is not defined by exercises or weight measuring units or food. Well, maybe kind of by food. What I am is strong. Like, really strong. So if you're interested in being really strong, buy a Juggernaut shirt.
Okay.
Hey guys, what's up? Chad Wesley Smith here, joined today by Max Aita. Max is a lot of things: athlete, coach, gym owner. Max's Gym.
Yep, in Oakland.
Creative name. in Oakland, California. You guys based out of Oakland CrossFit as well?
Yeah, CFL.
All right. And you got background as a weightlifter, compete now as a powerlifter, and then coach both of those sports with a very impressive list of athletes that you have right now. Sharice Chan, top CrossFitter, great athlete, and weightlifter, and then one of the strongest chicks I've ever seen, Christy Hawkins, 165 total world record holder and squat.
Just the squat right now, but this next weekend should be the total.
Yeah, probably by the time you watch this video, you'll know who Christy Hawkins is.
Also, Alessandra Pacelli was a games athlete, and a couple other powerlifters that have done really well.
And then your personal athletic background is mostly weightlifting, up until recently.
Yeah. I started weightlifting. I mean, I got into weightlifting when I was 1996. I was 12 years old. I saw the 96 Olympics in Atlanta, and the only clip they showed of weightlifting was Naeem Suleimanov's third clean and jerk, which put him in a position to win his third gold medal, or his fourth gold medal. Sorry, third. That like image was burned into my mind, you know, and I was like, I'm going to be a weightlifter. So what I wanted to do, you know, when I was a little kid, I always wanted to be strong. It's kind of a funny story because the guy who was chaperoning him, they used to have like chaperones that all these like foreign lifters would come. Eventually, I got into lifting. I started working out like, you know, the high school or the middle school weight room, and, you know, lifting the like concrete and sand weights in my dad's garage and stuff. But I met the guy who was his chaperone, and his name was Steve Goff, and his son was in the 96 Olympics. Yeah. He held the American record snatch and clean and jerk up until recently.
He was 94, right?
He was 91.
Okay.
He was 91 kilos. He actually snatched 167.5 and clean and jerk 210.
And that 167.5 is the one that Colin broke with 168.
Yeah. They changed it to like 165, so they all broke it earlier. But same thing. Anyways, he was, you know, instrumental in teaching me, you know, how to train. He had adopted his whole training philosophy from Naeem's coach, who was the man I met later, Ivan Abadjiev, and that's kind of my sort of like full circle, like seeing this image of him, meeting a guy who had known him, and then meeting the man who coached him, and working under those two guys. And their training systems were almost like identical. It was.
And so for people not familiar with Ivan Abadjiev, you know, there's all this talk on the internet now about squatting every day and the Bulgarian method or Bulgarian system. Well, who they're talking about is Ivan Abadjiev, and the national weightlifting coach for Bulgaria, and you know, I don't think there's really anyone in the U.S. better equipped to talk about this idea of Bulgarian style training than you, because you did it under.
Yeah, I lived with him for a few months, and but I think that there's a really misconstrued term. I think the Bulgarian system or method isn't really the best. Isn't the best term to describe it, because within Bulgaria there were other coaches that had different systems, right? The Bulgarian lifters I lived with and trained with, when you talk to them, they would explain things like, oh, well, he does snatches on Monday and jerks after snatches. So his system is different than my system. And in our mind, we would look at that and say, that's not really a change in system, that's just a slight variation, right?
Yeah.
And so they had a really like rigid, like, this is his system, that's his system, because he does things slightly different.
It's kind of like, there's this quote from Abadjiev in, I don't remember the name of the article, but he talks about everyone wants to do his program,
right?
But you can't do, you can't do my program because then it would be your program.
Yeah, exactly.
A very small distinction.
Yeah,
maybe.
you hear that same thing from like the West Side, like, oh, if you don't train at West Side Barbell, it's not the same. And that's the same with anything, right? You're in any gym, it's going to be what it is.
Yeah.
Abadjiev was primarily the whole reason behind it. I mean, it was he has an evolution from when he first started coaching to where he basically ended his coaching career, and that came, all the system evolved year after year after year, generation after generation after generation. Things just, they changed, and there was a whole understanding that and learning that from him gives you a really good understanding as to why the system was the way it was. He started coaching, when he started coaching in Bulgaria, he, from what I remember, this could be slightly off, but essentially his first big athlete best break was Alex Krycek, and he was like a junior world champion and a silver medalist in '72. I think in training he had like a 205 kilo press. It was like a junior. He was like under 23.
What weight class is this in?
I want to say 100, 110, something like that. And he was, he's exceptional. But his system, Alex described workouts to us where he had his lifters do, this is from Ivan Abadjiev, 10 sets of 10 in the deadlifts, 10 sets of 10 squats, just tremendous volumes, every exercise in the book. He just brute force.
Yeah.
That was the thing.
And so, for people watching who maybe not as familiar with this idea of Bulgarian method or Bulgarian system, what is most commonly associated with that is, very, very high frequency of training, maybe 2 or 3 sessions a day, incredibly low exercise variation, really just, most people would associate it with just the competitive lifts, and then daily max squatting, whether that's in the back squat or front squat or some alternating variations. But obviously that's a very, very narrow look at what was a much broader idea. And so when I started lifting, I just got, once I kind of got to a real coach, when I met Steve, and, he showed me his version of the Bulgarian sort of model. Our training for Olympic weightlifting was, I would drive to the gym, it was an hour away. This is all up in Montana.
It was in Montana, yeah. So I'd drive up to his gym, it was an hour away, and I would do the first workout around 8:30 or 9. Always the same format, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Monday, the first exercise we do would be front squat to maximum, and it would be only single repetitions. So I'd do the empty bar for 5 or 6 to warm my legs, 70 kilos for 1 or 2, 120 kilos for 1, 170 for 1. At the time, probably like 180, 190, 200, and that would be the whole workout. Then we would do snatch, the same thing, essentially working up to maximum. I'll come back to that a little bit later, the Olympic lifts. And then after we do snatch and clean and jerk to maximum, we would front squat again. Usually we'd start at like 180 kilos and then go 180, 190, 200, or 210 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And occasionally after those maximum attempts, we'd back down, we'd take 10, 20 kilos off and do a set of 3 to 5 or 1 double or 2 doubles or something. And that was the same. So it was 2 squats in the morning, take a lunch break, 3 or 4 hours, 2 squats in the evening, and then the next day, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, would be another 2 squats morning, 2 squats evening. And that was his system. That was Steve's program. Eventually, he modified it and we would squat. We would do maximum front squat, maximum snatch, maximum front squat, maximum clean and jerk, maximum front squat. The first 6 years I trained as a weightlifter, I didn't do a single back squat, only front squats. I front squatted 235 kilos at like 80 kilos body weight,
That's
And
518 at 176.
yeah, and I couldn't do a 500-pound back squat.
All right.
I just hadn't done it. I mean,
Yeah.
I tried it and I think it's been 3 weeks within,
Yeah.
within a week or two of trying back squats, I could do 550. So, but yeah, I mean, that was the
How
system.
old were you when you did that?
I was probably about 19, 20, something like that. Yeah. And then, that system evolved eventually where we would just continually add more and more and more squat sessions. More and more time was devoted to squatting and whatnot.
What was the peak of that?
The peak of me hitting that?
All right, the peak of, as you add more sessions, what was the most that you did?
Let me think. There were, with Steve, the most I squatted was whatever, 6, 10, maybe like 35 squat workouts in a week. That was the peak with Steve. But later, after
35 in a week?
Yeah.
5 a day?
Yeah. There would only be 6 on Monday and then 4 on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And that would repeat itself 3 times, right? And then, there'd be random ones in there,
Like,
It's like, it's funny looking back on it because I was really good at squatting and it was like, well, it's easy
I would
and
hope so.
essentially free. So yeah, you just go in and do like, okay, we'll do, an extra squat workout. We would squat in between sessions of snatching. I mean,
it's like recreational squatting. at
right,
this
yeah.
point.
It was essentially just, I don't even know why we did it.
You guys
We just
didn't know
did
about like video games or something?
Yeah. There was a time.
I hope, if I have kids one day or something, to trick them into thinking that kind of thing is fun.
It's fun, yeah.
Yeah, like kids, it's Lunge Tuesday.
Well, it got-
only lunges around the house. Hooray for Lunge Tuesday!
It actually gets worse when you get injured, and inevitably you probably get some little injury, right? Like a wrist or a shoulder. I had really bad shoulder problems. My technique in the lifts was not good, and that was primarily because we didn't train to develop technique. We just trained for strength and to be aggressive. The first time I tried to clean and jerk 160 kilos, over the course of one day I missed it 30 times in 3 or 4 workouts.
And this is at the same time that you're front squatting 235?
Yeah. I could front squat 50, 60, 70 kilos over my max clean, but my back was really weak because we didn't do anything to develop my back strength.
Yeah,
Right.
that kind of efficiency, I may have that kind of weightlifting efficiency right
Right.
now.
Oh yeah. Yeah. A 915 squat and a 365 clean probably. Yeah. I mean, it was the system was flawed in that we didn't have a process to develop anything. Right. It worked really well for what it was. I mean, if you said, hey, give me a program that makes my front squat incredibly strong and absolutely comfortable, then that would be it. I mean, when I was with Steve, I could walk in the gym and front squat 200 kilos cold any day of the week, weighing 80 kilos, weighing 83 kilos. That was never, it just never even affected it. You couldn't feel it. And that would be like near 90%, maybe more. I could front squat 200 and maybe my best would be 215 or 220. So that whole system, played itself out to the point where I would get injured, my shoulders would hurt. When I get injured, the program was the same structure, 4 exercises in the morning, 4 or 5 in the evening, but every exercise became front squat. So you went from doing 4 front squats on Monday to doing 8 or 9, right? So what it would be like a session would be, you'd work in, you'd load the bar, you'd work up to the front squat, hit your weights, take 20-minute rest, 30-minute rest, enough of a rest to be tired, to be cold again. And then you'd start over again with 70 kilos and just do that every time.
What's the rationale in taking those rests between exercises?
So this is a funny story. The rationale from Steve was because that's what Abadjiev did. Everyone has this stuff that they talk about on the internet. Oh, well, they took breaks because the testosterone level goes up and down and all this. When I asked them, the Bulgarians, why do we take breaks? The answer was because they would go and smoke. They would go outside. It's like a job, right? They'd go outside and have a cigarette or just hang out and do nothing. And that was like the whole, it's an 8-hour-a-day shift. You just go out and relax. You also take a break in the competition, so I think it probably stemmed from something reasonable that makes sense. But the reality is, like, it was almost just a.
They go smoke in between lifts in the competition.
Yeah, guys smoke, yeah. They go outside, have a cigarette, you know. And that's like a great story, like the 88 Olympics is a Russian guy, but Zakharevich, who snatched 210 kilos at 110, which is still one of the best ever performances. Snatches 210 and 110, goes in the back, he sits outside, smokes a cigarette for 15, 20 minutes, comes back, starts his first clean and jerk with 200 kilos, and then works up to 250.
Naturally.
Yeah.
Of course.
Right. So, I mean, it was
As
just a
one
different,
does.
yeah, I mean, it's just a different culture there. We actually had a kid come into the gym one time, and Steve, his two twin Korean kids that were really good, really talented, and one of them smoked. And Steve was almost like his eyes almost lit up, like, oh, good. He's like, and he would snatch and then go outside and smoke. And we were like a high school. So, like, it was, of course, like illegal and just this whole debauchery, but yeah.
So you hear that, kids? You want to be good at weightlifting, you got to smoke.
And you got to drink. You got to be an alcoholic and smoke.
Yeah, that's what Klokov told me. If you want to be a professional athlete, you must get drunk sometimes.
That's very true. Yeah. That's, yeah. So, I mean, that was like the experience with Steve. We get injured, you do a bunch more squat workouts. And every time I did a squat, for the most part, you could say it was a single. I don't think I ever did really reps. I mean, every now and then we do like a heavy set of 5 or something, but like, it was more like, how many times can you front squat 400? You know, it was almost like irrelevant to the actual total volume of training. Yeah. Later, when I transitioned to training with Abadjiev, you know, and met him and worked through his program, the transition was flawless. There was no difficulty in transitioning to that system. And the same thing, his was much more structured. Whereas with Steve, there was a cultural understanding that, like, if you're hurting or sore or tired, you have to back off, or you have to, like, you know, okay, you're tired today, so we won't go all the way to maximum. With Abadjiev, the expectation was absolute. Everything's maximum is maximum. The only weights that count are the heaviest weights.
I think that's important to understand because, you know, as there is more information out there about Bulgarian method or whatever you want to call it, and squatting every day, people will propagate this idea that it's not a true it's a daily max by feel. Yeah. And if you feel bad, then you don't do it. And we've had this conversation before, and basically Abadjiev would say you find a way to PR.
Yeah. Essentially, yeah. I mean, it was, you know, if you're really experienced and you've trained like that, like me, or, you know, I'm sure, like, you know, a lot of Pat Mendez could squat whatever he wants any day, and he knows what his body's going to do. He knows it's going to be. I don't have to squat to failure every time because I know I can build myself up and get to a 300 kilo squat, right? If you aren't at that point, you have no foundation, no base, then you have to, it's every workout was the limit, the absolute limit. I missed squats almost every workout. I just push every single time with Steve and with Abadjiev to the point where you're going to miss. And it was just absolute maximum. You know, the idea of like a training max in the squat is irrelevant because it's pure strength. I mean, your technique is essentially solidified, and if you can lift it, you're going to lift it. In the Olympic list, it's a little different, but the same thing applied to those. Maximum Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 5 kilos less, 10 kilos less. But there's no like, oh, I only feel good for that today. It was, you know, I mean, Abadjiev was excited and happy when you're trying to snatch a weight 7, 8, 9, 10 times, right? That was his model. So
that would fall much more in line with like John Bro's kind of famous quote of like, how you feel is a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I was squatting with Abadjiev because the rigidity was so, the program was so strict. Everything was here to so, like, Monday was always the same. Everything's the same. There was no like, oh, you don't feel so good, let's do a little different workout.
It's more like, fuck your feelings.
Right, yes. Just, there wasn't even like, he didn't even acknowledge it. It's just like, well, do you want to do this or not? Like, do you want to be Olympic champion or like, I mean, why are you here?
Yeah.
Like here's the training, do it. If you don't want to do it, then I don't care. So good story about that too. But so I'll tell a story. When I got there, I trained. Everything was like, I'm gonna just do everything.
Mm-hmm. How old are you at this point? Starting with that?
Mid-20s, early 20s, and I was like, every workout, I'm gonna fucking crush it. Every kilo, I'm just gonna fight, and I did every time, just smashing weights every day. And the first 6 weeks, I'd done this for 6, 7, 8 years already. So it wasn't like new to me to push hard like that and miss 20, 30 attempts. The one thing I didn't understand that was different is that with Steve, there is a coach-athlete connection that was like, okay, let's be a little smarter here. You're really beat up, let's take a little break.
There's some American compassion.
Yes, there's a little compassion, right? Well, Abadjiev, I came in and he told me within 6 weeks, he was like, you can be an Olympic champion, right? That was he said this to me. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna go and I'm just gonna do it, everything, whatever it is. The Bulgarian lifters told me, hold on, Max, we need to teach you something.
He says that to all the guys.
Yeah, maybe. I'll just pretend he didn't. I'm special.
Yeah, like how I am with Jackie Perez grabbing my picture.
Yeah.
If you're watching Jackie, I still think that I'm the only one that you did that to.
Yeah, every stripper loves me. Anyways, they tell me about this concept. And this is sort of the key that people miss in the Bulgarian system. This is a word that doesn't directly translate to English. The word is krushka. And it's essentially like, it's not just sandbagging, but it's like 10 of you go into the gym, Abadjiev's at the front, he's watching.
Yes.
Okay, hey, where's Angel Popov? He's not, where is he? And then he just pops out from behind a corner. Oh, hey, I snatched 170. You write it down in the book? They have like a log book. I did 170, okay. All right, and you'd be like, okay. And then like, they would literally be like, okay, you can squat 230 right now. Maybe squat 210, but make it look like it's really hard. So he'll give you a little rest. I mean, they were like, the Bulgarians were the masters of like deceit and trickery. I watched men clean and jerk with weights. One side of the bar is loaded to 160.
The craziest things ever.
One side of the bar is loaded to 160. One side is loaded to 230. And he would he'd always sit in the same chair every day in this like scowl on his face, just like every day. And so you only see one side of the bar. Mm-hmm. And this happened all throughout Bulgaria for years, generations. There's generations of people that have probably mastered this skill. So they would clean and jerk it. They just step up to the bar crooked and kind of feel it out until they knew where they were balanced, make the lift. And in their mind, they did like 180, right? Or 190 instead of 220. And in their mind, they got one over on him so good. They totally like, that's it. I'm a genius. I think he knew about this a lot. I think he had to. I mean, he had to understand this. They also trained hard when it was important.
Yeah.
But I think he knew about this enough that his system evolved to the point where, well, I'll just give them this absolute workload and say, you have to do it this way.
Yeah.
Just get it done. They'll figure out a little bit.
Self-regulated a little bit with some
The problem is, if you tell people that, then they just turn into the training max thing.
Yeah.
Or it turns into,
If they think they have some leeway,
they're going to take it all the time.
Yeah, if they think they can go to here, they're going to go to here. So you only tell them they can go to here, so they end up here where you're okay with.
Yeah, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. Yeah. And that's what people will do 9 times out of 10. He didn't give them anything, but they stole that inch, right? So that was like the whole gist of like that. Anyways, back to me, going to be Olympic champion, crushing it, making every lift, just attacking weights. I mean, I think I power snatched 110 the first day, and I power snatched 110 the first day on the platform. I hadn't done powers in a while, but my best was probably about 110, 115. And I turned and watched Nikolai Hristov snatch 185, which is more than I could clean. And about 7 or 8 days later, I power snatched 130. And it was just like, instantly, here's the standard, you better keep up.
Yeah, I think that's something important to understand. I hear stories about all the time. It's not like Max got 20 kilos better at snatching in a week.
Right.
It's just that power of expectation. And Stan and I talked about it yesterday. We did a little interview like this. Like, once someone sees that it's possible and they remove this self-imposed limitation that they put on themselves, it's an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that comes down to the type of person you are too. You have to, before you even start training, if you're young, you can build that stuff. If you're a young person and you start training, you develop those emotional qualities in addition to developing the physical qualities. So you learn how to your coaches push you a lot, your teammates push you, you get into fights with your teammates. All these things kind of grow with you as you go. If you come to the sport at 30 or 25, you're a solidified person emotionally on some level.
Yeah.
And are you the kind of person who walks into a place and is going to attack it the way you want? And are you going to walk in and see some guy out-snatch you and say, well, fuck it, I guess I can't do that, I don't have talent?
Yeah.
Or are you going to say, I have to do better, I have to push myself? Right?
I think weightlifting certainly requires a unique personality in that sense because it's so tedious.
Yeah.
It's so repetitive. It's so solitary.
Right.
And that's why someone like Colin Burns, I think, has been able to come in and be very successful because he was literally a fighter. You know,
Yes. I mean,
he has that personality as a great competitor.
Yeah.
And that quality as a competitor is very hard to develop, especially as you're grown already.
You know, I actually was talking to Mike Israel in Philadelphia a few weeks ago about this. I was explaining that, like, in Bulgaria, a lot of the guys on the teams, I'm sure it's the same in Russia, Iran, all these countries. These guys were like, a lot of these guys were like thugs. I mean, they weren't like, there was obviously regular folks and there's fantastic athletes, but like, you look at like the NFL, and a lot of those guys are badass dudes that are gonna do kind of sketchy things a lot of the time, right? They're not afraid of a lot of stuff, and that's how those guys were. I mean, Angel Genchev was like in prison. I mean, they told me some story about him going into a nightclub with a pistol and shooting through this singer lady through her hoop earring. And they took him to prison for it. He may have murdered somebody. I mean, there was guys that were in prison for racketeering. Like, there's this one guy, Damian Damianov, that like they took him out of prison on special parole to lift on the team. You know, and he would like
wheel him out with his Hannibal Lecter.
He looked like, and he's like shaved head, as big as you, and looked like he probably ate somebody for breakfast. And he, you know, he snatched like 215 in training, clean jerked in the 250 range. But he was like the kind of guy, Martine said, he would like park his car in front of the police station and write like "fuck you pigs" on it and wait for them to come out and then fight them. So like, you have to imagine, like, that's the kind of guy that's in this system. Like, you push that guy against another guy who's, you know, on similar level, they're gonna fight for the top, and there's money involved. Like, it's a no-brainer. You're gonna get an aggressive, very, very strong dude. You see that a lot in powerlifting. There's a lot of like, you know, it's simpler, so I think people pick it up quickly, and there's a million gyms in the country, so, you know, there's big, strong dudes come in and start working out, and they start getting aggressive with each other, and it breeds big results, you know?
And you get Lee Moran. You know,
you get a Lee Moran, right?
Hell's Angel / powerlifter.
Right. Yeah, exactly, you know? So anyways, I keep skipping the story. So I'm supposed to be Olympic champion after a few weeks. He loves everything I'm doing, just crushing weights, every workout, just hammering, right? Like, I don't care what happens to me, I'll just push as hard as I can, I'll fight. My squat went from like 220 down to like, I couldn't stand up with 70 kilos. And I walked in the gym, the first day I couldn't do something. I walked in the gym this day, it's like a Wednesday. This is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I take 70 in the front squat. And this is, I mean, I could walk in front squat 200 cold 5 years ago. Take 70, bend my knees, and that's as far as it goes. I just bend my knees and I go down to the ground and I can't stand up. I've never in my life felt this like feeling of like, it's like all of your willpower is gone. And it seems like, okay, I can see when you're tired, you don't want to do something. It's not like tired willpower. It's like your will to exist doesn't.
You were a broken man.
I was broken.
Yeah.
I dropped 70. I stood up, just frustrated, like, I don't know what to do. Immediately, this is moments after I missed the first lift and just look like I give up. He turns to the other lifters. He turns to the whoever's translating. He is going to be Olympic champion of no training. And that was it. It was fucking over. Like, yeah, you're done. I guess you're a pussy. I guess you don't care. First like bad workout, first like I give up moment, and it's just over. Just fucking done. So that was like very eye-opening as to like where you have to be mentally. You know what I mean? You have to be just absolute. You can't give anything in, you know? And I think I came back, I probably made 70 and 120 and whatever. And then the next day was Thanksgiving. We had Thanksgiving off and ate and whatever, and did whatever.
It's the greatest day of your life ever.
The greatest day of my life. Came back on Friday and front squat at 2:30. So that was back to normal in one day. I mean, as far as overtrained, as far down as I went, like in one day I came back.
The Thanksgiving deload.
Yeah, it was not the amount of food I ate. I want to make that clear. It had nothing to do with going and eating a tremendous amount of food and then recovering, because it was psychological on most part, right?
Yeah, it was no amount of mashed potatoes can recover your soul.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that was the adherence to what needs to be done and the adherence to the program being intense was just an absolute. And when he gives you an absolute, you can play with it. If you trick it and cheat and krushka and do all these things, right? And that's where you get a little relief and a little adjustment. One thing that was kind of funny to me is when we were doing the training, I mean, I felt so slow and so destroyed and so beat up and so weak. Everything felt heavy. Everything felt terrible all of the time. A year or two later afterward, Martine, my friend, found some videos of us lifting, and we watched them, and we were like in shock how strong and fast we looked. Because he was like, I mean, I remember doing this 200 clean and jerk, like that felt like death, and it looks like I could do 230. So it was interesting kind of getting that experience years later, seeing like how good we actually were. It's like sometimes you'll lift a weight and you'll be like, it felt really hard, and you watch it and you're like, it's a lot easier. But this was like,
it feels worse than it looks.
Yeah, it always does. And in that case, it was like, it felt so bad, like it was just horrendous. But again, same thing, like it was kind of surprising to see that, So again, another like, how it feels is not necessarily what's really happening. It's just, that's your body's way, that's whatever, your mind's way of sort of reinforcing what you're thinking, I think. That this is bad, this is awful, like you give into that cycle and you just constantly go through it. If you don't do that a lot, if you're not the kind of person that does like this self-talk of like trying to like talk yourself into or out of a situation, if you just walk in and approach things this is what's in front of me, I have to do this.
Yeah, I think that's like an important personality trait for success in strength sports, powerlifting, weightlifting, a lot of things, but particularly sports like that, is that more middle of the road kind of personality. Because, and John Wooden talks about this in one of his books, that with every peak comes a valley. And if you have this personality where you make a great lift and you get elated about that,
or it's going to be the opposite the other way.
Or you miss lifts and you get all down the dumps. It's unnecessary stress to the process. And if you can, when you fucking squat 35 times a week, like if 17 of those are good and 18 of them are terrible, and you're just here all the time.
It's really funny too, because that was something that changed about me emotionally as a person and a lifter. Is once you go through that kind of training, you hate lifting. You have to go through this point where you just are done and you just don't love it anymore. So you love this thing, and then it just ruins it's not fun anymore. It's no longer enjoyable. Then you kind of come through that and grow a little bit and realize that you appreciate it and you love what it is, but you don't have any attachment to the quality or the way training is. It just kills that. It kills that, like, I go in and lift for PRs because then I get a happy like feeling and I feel good and I go home and like I enjoy it. It's like I have to go in and squat because I know that that's what needs to be done. I have to go in and snatch, it has to be done. If I make 60 kilos, whatever. If I snatch 160, whatever. It's just another lift, another day, and the process needs to be executed, and that's just how it is.
And do you think that kind of like threshold? Yeah, I'm sure in a system like that, I don't know that I've ever gone through something like that in powerlifting or strongman or anything, but that sort of threshold existed for everyone in what you guys were doing.
I think everybody got to that point
and that some people came through it and some people died.
I think I know a few people that were in the program. I don't want to say any names, but that just couldn't cut it. They couldn't tolerate it, and they didn't like it and the way it was, and so they never really put themselves in that place. They never put themselves in a place where, it's kind of like a relationship, right? Like where you can be vulnerable and then get run over and destroyed, and then you grow from that. They put themselves in a place a little bit, but then they feel like this is going to be really hard. This is going to be too tough, And so they kind of keep backing off or trying to find some shit that this is why or this why it's not going to work and whatnot. I mean, if you like, here's the free, maybe he'll cut this out at later and charge you guys for it, but the free how to squat every day and become really good at it. Go in the gym every day, as often as you can, as little as once a day or as much as 10 times a day, and squat to maximum every single time until you can't squat any more weight, right? And do that until you get to the point where you hate squatting and you hate life and it's something you don't want to talk about or think about or do. And then once you pass that point and you keep lifting, you get to a point where you can be appreciative of how to train and getting results and doing that stuff. But it's easy. I mean, squatting every day is the easiest thing in the world to do. You just do it. You just go in and do it. It doesn't matter what weight you squat. Don't sell yourself short. Don't say, oh, well, I did 190 yesterday, I'll do 185 today. Just go every time, hit the highest weight you can that you know you're gonna make, and take a jump to the PR, or take a jump to the next one. The first time I tried to squat 320 kilos, I would do that. I set myself up in a position where, this is after Abadjiev. Mm-hmm. So after Abadjiev, I trained, and I was in a program at California Strength, and we don't have a coach or anything, and there was no one really cared about our lifting, so we just kind of figured stuff out and did whatever. My shoulders were totally messed up. I needed surgeries. I then eventually hurt my wrist, so I couldn't snatch a clean jerk anymore. So that was over. So I said, well, I'll just go back to what I used to do, which is when you're injured, you squat every day.
Let's actually take it. So we talked about all this stuff with, the Bulgarian system, Bulgarian training for weightlifting and your experience there. But most people now would probably, know you more as a powerlifter, and whether they've seen you in super training videos or coaching at meets, whatever it may be. Talk to us about that personal transition for you from weightlifting to powerlifting.
So after my time, Abadjiev, and kind of my injuries basically kicked me out of the sport. I like to say that nobody ever quits weightlifting. Weightlifting quits you. And so I was, weightlifting dumped me. And my hand was severely injured. I don't know how people know, but I dislocated the lunate bone in my hand and my wrist, and to make a long story short, I wasn't able to get surgery on it for 13 months. And 13 months later, they put the bone back in, and eventually the bone died. And so that's why, this wrist bends that way, this one doesn't bend all the way. It's unstable. I can't turn it over fast like a snatch or a jerk. I could do it clean because I catch on my fingertips, but I don't. I mean, it's just not worth it. So that pushed me out of weightlifting. At the time, I didn't really have anything to do. I didn't know what to do. So I was injured, so I decided, well...
how many years ago was this?
This was in 2009.
Right.
So in 2009, I was totally injured, totally out of the sport. I had a bunch of shoulder surgeries too, and I decided that I would just start squatting, because that's kind of what I just did. You just wanted to stay in the habit of it and do those things. I had no idea what I was going to do. Actually, sorry, there was about 6 months where I did nothing. I just sat on the couch every day, drunk, drinking myself to sleep, and just completely depressed, and wanted to just die. There was nothing. Everything was gone, right? Since 12 years old, this is all I wanted to do. And at some point, I walked into the gym, and I hadn't lifted in 6 months. I probably weighed I don't even know, maybe 170 pounds. I mean, as light as I was when I started, maybe I'm just super skinny and weak. I was standing there, and I think John North was trying to back squat. He'd been training really hard. He was trying to squat 200 kilos. And there was another guy in the gym, one of the clients of the gym was hanging out, and he was like, hey, kind of trying to build John up, to do it and all this. And I decided to be an instigator, because I like to do that. And I said, I don't know why you're making a big deal out of it. It's 200 kilos. I could do that right now without warming up. That's just 200. Who cares? I hadn't touched a weight in 6 months, right? And the client was like, he's actually on the counseling, the big Mike, the big black dude, right?
Yeah.
He's like, bullshit. There's no way you could do it. I'll give you $20 if you do that. There's no way you could do that. And I said, all right, fine. And so I took his $20, and I walked over and squatted it with no warm up, just cold, just first squat in 6 months, easy, made it.
How sore were you the next day?
I was incredibly sore. It was incredibly painful later. Every story you ever hear about those kind of things, it's great that moment, and then about 10 minutes later, it just starts to hurt for a week.
Walk and strut off, and then
Yeah.
as soon as you get around the corner,
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I did. Just uncomfortable. I couldn't have done a double. I couldn't have done another rep, but that was it. But that kind of like, I did that, and it sort of like reignited a little bit of like desire to train again. And so, I started squatting. I started squatting every day. But instead of doing front squats like I had done the entire previous, lifetime, I started back squatting, and I started doing just a regular weightlifting, a high bar, normal back squat. And I started kind of trying different things, and this is where I kind of deviated a lot from like Abadjiev and Goff, where I would squat, and because I worked at the gym, I would show up at 8 o'clock in the morning and squat, work up to a heavy single or a maximum single, then take 30 minutes off and do it again. Or I would do things where there's a million variations of things I did. I would do, maximum back squat all the way up, strip the bar down to nothing, start over with front squat, right? And just all these things I would try and play around with. At that point in time, I didn't have any other thing on my mind to do, so I just squatted. And I would generally squat 6 to 8 times on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then 4 to 6 times on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. And that was just kind of how the pattern sort of fell into place, right? I would just do that because it was, whenever I trained and was in the gym that often, so I would do that. There were days I squatted as many as like 10 times. I'd squat, 4 times in the morning, 4 times in the afternoon, come back at night, late at night, like 10:30, and do a squat, and then rest and another squat.
Did Rich Piana rip off the idea for the 8-hour workout?
Yeah, this is the 8-hour leg workout.
Aita, 8-hour leg workout.
In case you don't know, I don't have very big legs. I have almost no muscles on me. And at the time I had no muscle. I was like, this method of training never built any kind of like muscles. I mean, it's just, Colin yesterday told me that when I put those tights on that I looked skinny, that my legs were skinny. And they're probably as big as they've been. But it was just, that was the process, right? And I think I probably started at like 200 and worked up to, I worked up to 600 pounds, so 272. The first time I squatted 272, I walked in, I did 70 kilos, just red bumpers. So 1 red, 2 red, 3 red, 4 red, 5 reds, and that's 595.
Yeah.
So I made 595, and Donnie Schenkel was standing there, and I was surprised, like, oh, cool. And he said, why don't you do 600? So I put 273 on, made that, and then that was cool. And then someone's like, hey, go tell Glenn you did 600. And John was all excited. He ran and told Glenn, hey, Max squatted 600 pounds. And Glenn comes out, and they'd see me, they all see me squat every day, all the time. So Glenn just like, well, do it again, I'll get on video. So then okay, sure, I guess I can do it again. So then I did it again. So I hit my PR 3 times in a row. And there's a video of it on, I'm sure on Cal Strength where I make that. And it's a lot, the last one's the hardest, right? So the video of me, it looks like it's this grinder. The first one was like just nothing. But that was kind of like unique qualities of training like that. You could do things that were sort of like, the threshold of where you train at is so close to your limit that you can do these interesting kind of things that you wouldn't be able to do if you trained in a program that had more distributed loading, where you have 1 or 2 squat workouts a week. You couldn't do your squat workout from yesterday and then today come in and do, some others kind of like work up to 850 again.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably could, but it's like, it wouldn't feel good. You couldn't do it 3 or 4 days in a row.
No.
But if you train like that, you could squat up to like 770 every day.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference, right? It's like, it flattens out the peak and becomes a plateau.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, did all the squatting. That same guy, Mike, told me one day, hey, if you're gonna squat all the time, why don't you try and kick someone's ass with it? Like, what's the point of doing this if you're not gonna try and beat people doing it? And so I said, okay, well, I'll try powerlifting, and met Jesse Burdick, and he kind of was like, hey, you should try this, right? Up until that point, I had never done deadlifts and I had never done bench presses. So I had 12, 15 years of training under my belt and never done a bench press or a deadlift. I mean, I probably had laid down a bench press at some point, but like never had a consistent 4 or 6 weeks of bench pressing in my life.
It shows.
It shows. It shows a lot. And I could deadlift. I could barely deadlift like maybe 500 pounds conventional, and it was just extremely difficult. I could never get the bar off the ground. But I could front squat 550, right? So, he gets into it, so I did that. So I created a system where I was like, well, I don't know how to train for this. I'm going to sign up for this meet and do it. I guess I got to deadlift and bench press. I was really apprehensive about bench pressing at first because my hand was so damaged. I didn't want to bench press every day and find out that I would lose my wrist.
Yeah.
Because a lot of doctors told me if you do stuff with this, if you lift with this hand, you're going to lose your fingers and you're going to have it amputated or fused together. You can't do anything. So of course I didn't listen to them and I started training on it and ended up feeling a lot better.
Masturbating furiously with your left hand.
That's all I would do every day. That's a lot of work.
That's the Aita rehab method.
The Aita sex method, 8 hours a day. So I started doing a program kind of like what Abadjiev would do, where it was, it's going to sound really funny, but I would do back squat maximum, deadlift maximum, back squat maximum, and then at the end I would do some kind of bench press thing. Usually I would just do like the bar dumbbells type stuff, just because I was really scared about my hand still. That whole time, actually, this whole time of me squatting, I didn't even put my hand on the bar. I used straps. You see all these videos of me.
I've seen those.
It hurt so much to put my hand on the bar, and I was still scared of it that I would just put straps on the bar, hold it. And again, you do it all the time. I could do like a 600-pound squat without my hands. It was just interesting things you learn. That taught me a lot about the mechanics of squatting too. Learning how to be balanced and upright and focus on using certain muscles rather than trying to incorporate all these other things, right? When you take your hands off the bar and you do it, it's not like a training tool, but it's just this kind of, you do that, you start to learn okay, what needs to really be tight? What do I need to do with my arms, my hands to maximize the positions I'm in? Anyways, the system, was maximum squat, deadlift, squat. The evening, same thing, squat, deadlift, squat. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I would do the same, but I would do maximum squat, then 10 kilos, 20 kilos less than the deadlift because I was so destroyed from the day before. And then I would do some other variation of deadlift, like an RDL or a straight leg deadlift or something. And that worked for, a few months. I think I pulled maybe 600 that way, conventional. And I just was really bad at conventional deadlifts, so I tried sumo deadlifts, and right away it was better. It just felt stronger, and that allowed me to train a lot more because my back wasn't being worked so much. So then I could pull sumo deadlifts every day, and I pulled at least 600 pounds. There was a block of training, I used to have my journals, I don't know where they are now, but I have a block of training where there was about 6 months, 4 to 6 months, where I squatted every single workout, four workouts a day, 5 workouts a day. I squatted or deadlifted 600 pounds every single time. I never wore a belt, I never had knee sleeves or anything. So I did that, for months and months and months. And I think I pulled 300 kilos after that and then squatted 310. And, bench pressed 135 pounds probably. But that was what I did. It's, comparing it to what I do now or how I would coach someone now, it's a lot different.
Yeah.
But that was the basic, setting it up and how I, went from squatting every day and doing that kind of thing to try and transition it into a powerlifting program. That was what I did, but I wouldn't even, if someone wanted that kind of training program, I wouldn't do it now. I would not have I wouldn't set it up like that.
Yeah, and something we've talked about before is that transition from, or the efficacy of the high bar squat versus the low bar squat.
Yeah.
You spent your life. I'm pretty sure that this video is going to be called Max Aita Squatting Life. And, just front squatting and high bar back squatting.
Yeah.
And I've said this before to people. I think that the high bar squat is the best way to build strength, and the low bar squat is the best way to express that strength.
I would totally agree.
And talk about that transition.
So when I high bar squatted my whole, like you said, and then after this period of time, I stopped basically training like that. I kind of stopped. I kind of got into powerlifting, and I tried a bunch of different powerlifting routines and stuff like that.
So you did West Side?
West Side. I did some other stuff too that was just like, I don't even remember, just stupid things you hear about. And then
Juggernaut methods.
Juggernaut. I was like, well, I got to change my technique because everyone I squat against squats with the bar really low on their back. And it was frustrating to me because I would walk in and I could hammer a 600-pound squat and there would be nothing. It wouldn't even, it was like every day, you know, I could just every day. And they would squat 650 and they would be higher than me and they'd be bent over, and it just made, like, I didn't get it. I was like, why the hell is it like, there's no way that guy could do 600 the way I'm doing it, so why am I losing to him? So I started like, okay, I'll move the bar down my back, that's what they do. So I put the bar really low, and then all anyone ever talked about was sitting back, sit back, sit on your heels. I did all that, and the way I'm built, my torso is a lot longer than my legs. It just put all this strange pressure. It didn't feel easier, it was just awkward and bizarre. I eventually tore my adductor and my hamstring a bunch of times doing that. And then I finally, like, you know, got some good advice from other good lifters and started looking back at what lifters were doing in other federations, IPF, and just looking at how other lifters train, other people did stuff, exploring, you know, and basically reverted back to squatting like a high bar squat and then just moving the bar down my back when I got to a meet, and move the bar down an inch or two off my traps. The high bar squat, the bar's like up on my trap. The low bar squat, the bar's not on my trap, but as close as I can get it.
Yeah, a pretty small.
Very, very small difference.
Yeah.
And it only, the small difference just gives you better leverage. I mean, it just gives your, you know, your back is now shorter basically, so you have a little more of your back to use, so you can grind through the middle a little better. When you squat with your legs a lot, like you do or I do, you miss high up in the lift, and it's generally because you tip forward, right? If you squat with your back a lot, you could be tipped over from the beginning and grind it out the whole way, right? So that, you know, that little technical changes, that kind of stuff, was a transition for me. I mean, it just, I think training so much in one way, that was effective, you know, and then trying to switch to a different way and having it be such a dramatic difference that really, looking back on it, didn't make sense. I wouldn't teach anyone to squat like that now. And you know, that's what caused me a bunch of problems, and, you know, sort of created a bunch of issues because of that. But yeah, and then obviously changing the techniques, learning the different techniques of the lifts. The Sumo Deadlift, you know, became like my favorite lift because it was so much more, it made so much more sense to me, right? Pulling conventional is not necessarily a bad, you know, I would train conventional all the time anyways, but pulling sumo suddenly became like, this is how you deadlift, right?
Yeah.
Just because the way I was
Like
built.
a cheater.
Like a cheater, right? Because you put your legs wide, and so clearly there's no gravity anymore.
Weird Eastern European.
Yeah. But again, like, that same system was just, didn't establish, there's a process. It's just, you know, on Monday I could squat 300 kilos, and on Saturday at the meet, who knows what I was going to squat. Hopefully it's 310,
Yeah.
you know?
So what would you say that the main, well, do you think that there's really a lot of efficacy in using a daily squatting program for competitive powerlifting?
For competitive powerlifting, I would say no. What I do, I've coached 2 women to all-time world records in powerlifting. Neither one of them has squatted every day. One of them currently holds an all-time record in the squat at 457 at 165. She just did 501 at 165 in training. So, and her squat program is once a week of squatting, and then 2 times a week of accessory, or one other time a week of, like, essentially heavy bodybuilding kind of training, leg presses, hack squats, that kind of stuff. Some other little special exercises we do. But, you know, if someone said, John Rose is I love the way he says the thing, like, if someone held a gun to your family's head, what would you do to improve your squat? Well, if you ask that question to John Rose or to Antonio Krastev or Abadjiev, they'd have you squat every day. If you ask that question to Ed Cohen, he'd probably squat once a week. And both of those guys would probably get what they were trying to get to, right? I think that question is not, it's just a strange question. It's like, if you're put in a place where you have to panic and choose the thing immediately in front of you that seems like the right option, yeah, you're gonna panic and choose some option. But there's no way Ed Cohen's gonna go in and squat every day and think he's gonna squat 1,019, because he's done it before. He knows that if he does his system the way he's gonna do it, it's gonna work, right? So the squatting every day for powerlifting, I don't see it as a strategic move that makes sense. It doesn't mean it can't work. I mean, I squatted 705 in the powerlifting meet like that, and it worked, you know? The rest of the meet was terrible. You know, it's like, it's strategic. Everything is strategy. Your training program is a strategy. It's not just, this is the best training program, and so if I do it right, at the meet I'll be successful. It's setting yourself up every training session, every mesocycle, microcycle, everything you do is setting yourself up so that at the meet you have the best possible result, not just that you executed the perfect training program and then boom, you win because that was the hardest one to do and you won, and you did it all. On the other side, I do have lifters train squatting every day or every workout for weightlifting. And in certain situations it makes a lot of sense. But for powerlifting, the sport is, you know, the squat's a third of it, bench press is extremely important, deadlift is probably the most important. So you just have a very different, a different approach. Yeah.
If there was one thing that you learned in this lifetime of squatting and going through these, you know, just soul crushing moments of training that, you know, has really shaped what you do now, what is that one thing, if you could pick one out?
One thing. In all of the time I've squatted, I would probably say that willpower is the most important factor in becoming successful in anything, especially squatting, especially lifting. That not just the willpower to I can fight through the hardest squat workout, but the willpower to make smart choices, right? You know, not totally related to squatting every day, but I mean, I hurt my hand because I made a choice that wasn't on the program, that wasn't in my mind at the time. I didn't have the willpower to resist that, you know? The willpower to have shitty days and not let it affect you, or the willpower to you know, to do what you have to do, not do what you want to do. You know, in addition to also having to be fucking tough and push yourself through really hard training.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that's probably the biggest thing I learned.
I think we got a lot of great information here. Hopefully you guys learned a ton. Where can people learn more, connect with you?
maxsgymoakland.com. That's how to get to my the website for the gym, and you can also contact me in the next probably 6-8 months, or sorry, by the end of the year, we're gonna have an online program that'll probably have some kind of daily squatting type system for weightlifting, and then we'll see what the interest is for powerlifting, but we'll maybe come up with something like that.